Hi there, it's Natasha N.K.O. It is the 25th of June and it's 13:58. I'm continuing to read from Brothers and Sisters. I last read chapter 4, so I will reread the final paragraph of chapter 4, then move on to chapter 5. Don't look now, but you're being watched, Mallory whispered. Esther turned. Across the room, a man she judged to be just shy of 6 feet, with skin the colour of biscuits and a neatly trimmed moustache, was smiling at her, all of her. He was wearing a Western Express uniform. The navy blue shorts clung to the tightest, roundest arse she'd ever seen and revealed calves that belonged on a basketball court. Mandingo warrior, Esther thought, thinking of Vanessa's term. She sniffed disdainfully and marched into her office. Moments later, when she glanced out her glass wall, he was still staring at her. Chapter 5. Girl, you're not dressed yet? Vanessa asked when Esther answered the door in her pyjamas the following week. I thought we were going to run. We are, Esther said, stifling a yawn and closing the door behind Vanessa. But you don't have to be so doggone cheerful about it. Vanessa stretched her arms above her head and stood on her toes. I have to be fit if I'm going to be Denzel's woman. I have to have leg muscles and quads for those romantic close-ups. You are a truly sick woman, Esther said, laughing in spite of her fatigue. No, listen, I'm going to get this part. It's down to 15 of us now. I always knew I could make it in this town. 15 people. How, she wondered, could Vanessa be so excited about such long odds? Do you know how many people auditioned for this part? Every sister in Hollywood, maybe 100 women. The dreadlocked diva herself went out for the role, so to make a cut like that is fantastic. Oh, that's great, Esther said, giving Vanessa a tight hug. Girl, affection is cool, but you have the morning but you have the morning mouth of life. How about a quick shot of Listerine for the road? At 5:30, the early chill of the dawn pushed away the last vestiges of sleepiness in Esther as she and Vanessa stretched in front of her house. After a few minutes, they started jogging. Vanessa followed Esther's lead. For the first 15 minutes, they ran through the flat lands of the neighbourhood, starting off slowly, almost haltingly, doing more talking and laughing than running. Then they picked up a steady sprint as they passed the elementary school and a tiny park in the centre of the community. The scent of oranges, lemons, roses, and gardenias mingled in the heavy, sweet air. The city was waking up as they ran. Esther could see bedroom and kitchen lights, people in bathrobes opening their front doors to retrieve their morning papers. On every street, the whirring ch-ch-ch-ch-ch of the automatic sprinklers doused lawns and flowers, giving what the sky would withhold for at least another month or two. The women had to run in the road to avoid getting wet. Sometimes Esther could smell eggs, toast, and bacon cooking from the houses they passed, and hear voices from open windows. She wondered what it would be like to cook breakfast for her family, to see her children off to school, to kiss her husband goodbye. Esther relished the wind in her face as they left the flatlands behind, and she appreciated the strain she felt in her legs as she took the gently angled hills. Her heart pumping, the sweat beading up, and then pouring down the sides of her face energized her. They got into a rhythm, offset by shrieking crows, as they passed through the clean, wide streets. Their bodies were soaked by the time they had reached the first of several rolling hills, and the running had become more strenuous. Vanessa began panting. They both fell silent as they concentrated on getting up the really steep incline, the big one they called it, which suddenly loomed in front of them like a 90-degree angle. As Esther climbed, her breath came in ragged spurts and her ears began to hurt a little inside. The strain in her calf muscles became one solid ache, and when she looked around, Vanessa was faltering too. Every time she breathed, Esther felt as though someone were jabbing an ice pick in her chest. She kept lifting her legs and putting them down, even when she wanted to scream. All right, Esther called out jubilantly when she and Vanessa reached the top. They hovered near each other, catching their breath, enjoying their exhilaration and closeness, the mad way their hearts were pumping. The sun was shining and already Esther could feel the heat rising. Running always cleared her mind, and now, as she strode home, She could see her day spread before her like a road jammed with traffic. She clicked off her appointments in her head. What are you thinking about? Vanessa asked. You look so intense. Work, Esther said. I've got a lot to do today. She saw that Vanessa was looking at the house next door to Esther's, which had a sold sign stuck in the lawn for several weeks. A huge moving van was being unloaded. Looks like you've got new neighbours, Vanessa said. Standing on the sidewalk, watching the moving men were a white woman, a black man, and a beige little girl with the wildest, crinkless hair Esther had ever seen. Flames leapt into the pit of her stomach. She sucked her teeth in disgust and scowled. What's the matter? Vanessa asked. Esther sighed. Why do I have to wake up every day and see some brother and his white woman? Girl, don't trip. Girl, don't trip, Vanessa admonished her. Go over there and introduce yourself. But Esther shook her head. She waved as Vanessa drove away, then she went into her house, slamming the door behind her. At 8:30 that morning, Fred Gaskins, one of the 4 operations managers from the downtown branches and the only male in the group, leaned across the conference table, his face contorted, his eyes bulging, until his nose was almost touching Esther's. You mean to say that you want us to give the tellers a $200 limit on check cashing approval? Whose idea is that? Is that your idea? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. His cheeks turned redder and redder. The remnants of Esther's runner's euphoria rapidly dissipated in the face of such overt hostility. She could feel her shoulders converging with her neck and her fingers clenching the pencil she held in her hand. She tapped her foot rapidly against the back rung of the chair. This was not the first time she wanted to reach across the table and squeeze Fred Gaskin's fat little neck, but she managed to smile and keep her voice low, even as the decibels in his kept rising. You insubordinate, Bart Simpson-looking asshole. I'm not letting you make me lose control, she thought, wishing she could scream the words at Fred. What about it seems ridiculous to you, Fred? Asked Esther. There wasn't a trace of emotion in her voice or expression. 2 of the women managers waited, their faces impassive, but a third, Dory, was smirking, her thin lips pressed together in pure delight at the simmering feud she was witnessing. Esther had realised from the first time she had met them that Dory and Fred were in cahoots. They each thought they should have gotten her job, and even though they had always competed with each other, they were united in their resentment that an outsider had swept in and taken the plum that belonged to them, especially since that outsider was a black woman. Fred retracted his nose an inch. That's given way too much power to entry-level people. I feel that my authority is being eroded. Fred, every time your tellers have to come to you for your approval to cash a check, that takes you away from something more important. This move will ultimately enhance your position by freeing you to exert your authority in more meaningful ways, Esther spoke softly. Obviously, you're not down on the front lines often enough to know the caliber of people you want to allow to make these kinds of important decisions. Fred said with a sneer. Some of them are so fresh off the boat they can barely count in English. The others come from substandard high schools in South Central. He spat out the last statement, as though it was something nasty tasting in his mouth. One of the women flushed and looked at Esther sympathetically. Esther counted to 10 silently before she spoke. Fred, I'm convinced that where a person comes from has nothing to do with his ability to count. But, she said in a soft, sweet voice, perhaps it does reflect upon your ability to judge character if you've chosen to surround yourself with incompetent people. Are you trying to tell me something about your skills? You still haven't told us who approved this, he said, glowering at her while he settled back in his chair. Fred, I approved it, and I assure you the idea went through all the proper channels before it became policy. My understanding is that it will be instituted throughout the branches within the next 3 months. My God, not South Central, I hope. Can those tellers count to 200? He asked. Dory giggled. Esther wanted to scream, "Fuck you," in Fred's face. She could taste those words as they burned her throat. Instead, she said quietly, the new $200 maximum will be instituted in the downtown branches 2 weeks from today. I hope that's clear to everyone. Esther looked directly at Fred. I've got the bank's interest at heart, Fred said loudly. I assume we all do, Fred, Esther said. If there are no other questions, let's adjourn. I'll see you all next month. She managed to exchange the pleasantries that were required after such meetings and even made a funny comment about the presidential elections. It was hard. Hard not to take the coffee she was drinking and hurl it at Fred, the little asshole. But she could be cool. Being cool would get her into lending, where the big deals were made and the rewards were greater. But when she heard Fred call out, affirmative action will be the death of this country, it was all she could do to keep herself from going straight for his jugular. Back in her office, Esther closed her door, hurled her briefcase into the corner, collapsed into her chair, and brought her fist crashing down on her desk several times. The sound was like a bomb detonating. The motion released some of her pent-up tension, but did nothing for her aching head, which had begun throbbing halfway through her meeting and now was reaching a crescendo of pain. Feeling around in her purse, Esther grabbed a bottle of Tylenol. She quickly chewed and swallowed 2 pills without water. Damn, she pounded the desk again as Fred Gaskin's words came back to her. Affirmative action will be the death of this country. She wanted to go find him right now and scream at him. I am qualified to do this job, and that's why I have it. God, what she wouldn't give to be able to file a complaint with EEOC. But if she ran crying racism every time an asshole like Fred said something about South Central or affirmative action, she'd only be cutting her own throat. When Esther left the bank that evening, her stomach was making the same kind of noise as her car made right before it was time to be serviced. The air was thick and hot. Looking around her, she silently prayed that her scarred, homeless friend wasn't around. Since their first encounter, the man had become a regular at the parking lot. Right now, she just wasn't in a charitable mood. Esther was nearly home when she decided that she didn't feel much like being alone. She turned her car around and headed back down Cranston toward her friend Vanessa's. Vanessa lived in a peach-coloured apartment building on the edge of Hancock Park, the mansion-laden, predominantly white community that lay east of Beverly Hills and north of Park Crest. The story was that N.K.O had integrated the neighborhood in the 50s at the height of its popularity, much to the horror of the white homeowners much to the horror of the white homeowners who, when they approached him about buying back his property, allowed that they enjoyed his singing very much. There still weren't a lot of black families in the vicinity, but the influx of those who followed the smooth crooner served notice to the older residents that black Los Angelinos would no longer remain banished in their allotted southern quadrant of the city. Who is it? Esther stepped back from the entrance to Vanessa's building and peered up at the small second-floor patio until she saw her friend peeking out of the sliding glass doors. It's me. The buzzer sounded and Esther opened the door. Just inside, an old white woman, her head full of silver hair, peered uneasily at her. Esther was about to say hello when she saw the fear in the blue eyes. My God, she thought. She's scared of me. She was so shocked that for a moment she didn't move. To her surprise, tears began gathering in her eyes. Standing there, she was 8 years old again, sitting alone at a table in the lunchroom of the North Side School because no one wanted to eat with her. The pain was so familiar, just as quickly as she felt herself begin to be filled with the rage she'd felt earlier that day. I'm not going to snatch your purse, you old bat, she thought, glaring at the woman. Hello, Esther. Hello, Esther said finally, in a tight, hard voice. I'm going to visit my friend Vanessa. The fear vanished from the woman's eyes. Oh, you know Vanessa. Esther could hear her sigh of relief. She smiled. Esther didn't smile back. Vanessa's apartment door was open. Esther entered and began picking up the newspapers and magazines that were scattered around the floor. As she straightened up, she could still see the frightened blue eyes, could still feel her own burning anger. Vanessa literally jumped out from behind the door and threw her arms around her friend's neck. Quit cleaning up, girl. I'm so glad to see you. I was going to call. Guess what? I got another call back. A call who? Vanessa asked in a dull voice. Another audition for the Denzel movie, Vanessa squealed, holding on to Esther's shoulders and jumping up and down. My agent just phoned me 10 minutes ago. It's down to 5 people. 5, go ahead, girl. They slapped palms lightly. Vanessa began waltzing around the room, holding up the edges of her silk hot pink bathrobe. As she twirled, her woven tresses spun out from her head. I am scared of me, girlfriend, she sang over and over. Congratulations, Esther said when Vanessa stopped whirling. She momentarily forgot about Fred Gaskins and the old woman and let herself feel happiness for Vanessa. So when do you go back? Next week sometime. Eee! She stamped her feet. Okay, I'm calm now. I'm cool. You want something to drink? Cranberry juice, diet Sprite, wine. She stopped abruptly. Her face became suddenly solemn. You know, I could really play the hell out of this part. I could be the bomb. Or I could be the bomb. And that's no lie. And that's no lie. I just want the chance. She turned her face up to the ceiling. I claim this role. After Vanessa poured them both a glass of wine, they toasted the callback. She stared into Esther's face. What are you looking so evil about? She asked. Esther grunted a little. When I was coming into your building, this old white woman took one look at my black face and got scared, and that pissed me off. Vanessa smiled as she settled herself in a chair on the small patio. Oh, you're talking about Helena? That's my girl. She brings me dinner sometimes. She's real sweet. How'd you scare her? I think she thought I was going to snatch her purse. Vanessa chuckled. She probably did. Girlfriend is real nervous around strangers. Real dumb, too. What kind of mugger wears a business suit and high heels? Who did she think I was? Willie Horton in drag? Vanessa chuckled. She's just jittery. She's cool when you get to know her. I don't need to get to know anybody who's scared of all black folks. I get tired of them being so scared of us all the time. Wears me out. What has happened to white people? They used to have guts. They'd be out there exploring strange lands, declaring war, conquering people, going into outer space. They weren't scared of nothing. Now the sight of one black person gives them heart failure. They need massive doses of Valium. She shook her head, ignoring Vanessa's laughter. I'm serious. I know they're scared of crime. Hell, I'm scared of crime. Yeah, there are black people who will rob you, rape you, kill you, but we don't do most of the crime in America. So how did we get the reputation of being the only criminals in this country? All these serial killers running around mutilating co-eds are white. All these damn cult leaders burning people up are white. Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, white. You don't see us shooting our parents for the insurance money. Get real. Black people have done everything you've mentioned, Vanessa said. But white people do every damn crime we do, and they don't get the rep. I'm calling up Jesse. Forget about civil rights. Who does white people's public relations? We need a damn ad campaign. Vanessa shrugged. I think you need the Valium, girlfriend, she said. I've lowered my expectations of my white brothers and sisters. Helena has redeeming qualities. Now, it is true that she is scared of strange black people, but she's very kind to me. In other words, can we all get along? Esther said, her lips curled up in a sarcastic grimace. Vanessa shrugged. In other words, Helena isn't into burning crosses, and sometimes she cooks me dinner. She's cool. Esther poured herself another glass of wine. She shook her head. You're a little more charitable than I am. I'm sorry, but if your first thought is that since I'm black, I must be a thief, then we can't deal. Why should her thoughts be my problem? If I dwell on Helena's racism and Joe Blow's racism, that's all I'm ever going to think about. I'll always be thinking about white folks, what they did to me, what they're getting ready to do to me, what they haven't thought about doing to me. I won't be thinking about what I want to accomplish and how I can do that. I'll be thinking about white folks. I'll always be angry, and that's given them too much power in my life. If I have to overlook some racism to stay sane, then hey, I will, Vanessa said, plucking Esther on the knee. Well, thank you, Miss Good Karma, Miss New Age. Hey, black folks need to get new. We've been running those same old tapes in our head about the mean old white folks for too long. If we can't find it in our hearts to love white folks, the best thing we can do is ignore them. How in the hell can you ignore white people? You have to focus on you. Every morning, go to the mirror and say, my colour is my joy and not my burden. Oh, please, Esther. Oh, please, Esther said, throwing up her hands. Vanessa shrugged. Anyway, what's happening with you? Rodney asked about you. Esther rolled her eyes, still holding on to her anger. Vanessa said, I don't know why you won't give that boy some play. Just a little. I heard he has a great big Johnson and can really do it. Not... IT. It. Not interested. No romance without finance. You're an evil heifer. How are you ever going to find somebody? Esther's response was a short laugh accompanied by a slight shrug. She changed the subject quickly. It was nearly 9 o'clock by the time Esther got home. She took out a cup of plain yogurt from her refrigerator, sprinkled it with raisins and sunflower seeds, and sat down at the kitchen table, scanning the Gazette as she ate her meal. When she finished, she went upstairs, put a Jane Fonda tape in her VCR, and began exercising. Halfway through her workout, she stopped and sat on the floor, rubbing away the burning sensation in her thighs. When the sharp pain dulled, her entire body seemed to go limp. She took a bath, then climbed into bed. Just before sleep claimed her, Vanessa's voice echoed in her mind. How are you ever going to find somebody? It was a question that made her rife with sweat and grapple against the strangling sheets as the night dragged on. End of chapter 5. Smashing. Thanks for listening.